Cinemassacre's Monster Madness.
Last sequel-a-thon, we talked about the Universal Frankenstein series. Now, it's Hammer time! That's right, this week we'll be discussing the Hammer Frankenstein series. Curse of Frankenstein was released in 1957 and was Hammer's first color horror film. Universal's Frankenstein was so famous, there was almost no point of remaking it. Whenever you mention Frankenstein, that's the version that comes to everyone's minds. So that's why you have to admire Hammer's effort, that they had the balls to remake it and to take it in their own direction. What makes Peter Cushing a good actor is that he could play either a bad guy or a good guy. In the Dracula films, he plays the heroic vampire hunter Van Helsing. The monster's played by Christopher Lee, and from what I've heard, the first time Cushing met Lee, he was in the monster makeup ready to shoot. It wasn't the first time they were in the same movie, but it was the first time they shared the screen together. A match made in horror heaven. Curse of Frankenstein is an excellent retelling of a classic story. It may get a little hokey once the monster is loose, but everything leading up to the creation is stellar. It ushered in a new wave of color horror films. Christopher Lee became their new monster star, also playing Dracula and the Mummy. Unlike the Universal Frankenstein series, which followed the monster as the recurring character, the Hammer series focused on Frankenstein himself. It's an interesting concept to have a monster series without an identifiable monster, instead an anti-hero or human monster, if you will, and to cheat death, it's almost as if he is an immortal fiend. I always had mixed feelings about this opening. I thought it was kind of frustrating that they don't explain outright how Frankenstein escaped the guillotine, and it was kind of cliche with them robbing the grave in the beginning. It's kind of like the beginning of Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and they did it again in Friday the 13th Part 6 with Jason. But, you know, as time went on and as I've rewatched this movie, I've come to appreciate the beginning for what it is. It's also important to note that this isn't a straight-up sequel, that there's a lot of continuity differences. In the last movie, only a few people knew of Frankenstein's experiments. Well, anyway, I love the ending. I love it so much that I'm able to forgive most of this movie's flaws. It's incredibly cheesy and it borrows a lot of plot elements from movies like House of Frankenstein, with the doctor promising the hunchback a brain transplant. So there's nothing that original going on. But Peter Cushing just knocks it out of the park. I like how it raises the stakes. Not only does Frankenstein have to deal with the dangers of his experiments, but also with the people who are trying to figure out his identity. It's a great, if not perfect, sequel, and it's just about as entertaining as the first one. What new tricks would the Doctor pull off this time? There was a great foundation to build off of, but with Evil of Frankenstein, they threw it all in the garbage can and needlessly rebooted the series. Now for an interesting turn of events. For this film, Hammer joined forces with Universal. That's right, a Hammer-Universal co-production. This allowed them to make the monster look more like the Universal version that everybody recognizes. You can call it stale or pleasantly familiar. You can look at it as a best of Universal Frankenstein repackaging done in color. It's often considered to be the worst of the Hammer series. I don't think that's necessarily true. It depends what you're expecting from it. If you're expecting it to break new grounds and progress the series forward, you'll be disappointed. But if you're looking for all the classic cliches, then you'll enjoy it. The best way I can sum it up, if this makes any sense at all, it's the most Frankenstein of the series. Frankenstein Created Woman has Terence Fisher back in the director's chair, so many would say this is a return to true form. The plot is a lot more original than Evil of Frankenstein. It's not at all predictable, but it may be a little bit too weird. Frankenstein's experiments have gotten so advanced now that he's moved past the point of transplanting brains. Now he's trying to transfer the soul. Even though the plot is completely ridiculous, there's something profound about the mistake Frankenstein made. He messed with the soul and body of two people who had emotional baggage. To Frankenstein, it didn't matter. Their emotions and how the experiment would affect them was no concern of his. All he wanted was to do it in the name of science, but he forgot about compassion. It's a convoluted, yet interesting addition to the series. Frankenstein must be destroyed. How's that for a hokey title? Unlike Dracula, Frankenstein is a mortal man. He could be killed. Isn't the word destroyed a little extreme? So, Frankenstein knows how to operate on a brain to cure insanity, but he doesn't know how to keep a brain on ice? I'm not a scientist. I don't know what would be more difficult, but doesn't it seem like Frankenstein should be a genius? How would this Dr. Brandt guy know something he doesn't know? It undermines how clever of a character Frankenstein is supposed to be. He can cure insanity, but he can't cure a heart attack? I hate this part of the plot. It's too complicated and it's not interesting enough to even care about. We've seen Frankenstein transplant brains before. We've seen him transfer the soul. So this isn't very progressive as far as sequels are concerned. If his experiments are successful, would he publicize them? All the bodies and brains he stole would be known. He would face murder charges and now add rape to the list. So I don't know. Maybe he's just willing to serve life in prison in the name of science. With everything this movie has going against it, the last act makes up for it. This is genuinely heartbreaking because we, the audience, know that her husband is still alive in a different body, and we desperately want to see them reunited. Talk about lack of compassion. Frankenstein is a real asshole, and this makes for great entertainment above your average horror fare. In a nutshell, this is a great sequel. It's a little shaky at first, but the final act is excellent. For the 5th film in a franchise, it's not bad. I don't really count Horror of Frankenstein as part of the series, not so much because it's a reboot. You could argue that all the Hammer Frankenstein movies are reboots because they all throw out continuity. The only thing that connects them all is Peter Cushing, and that's what Horror of Frankenstein is missing. It's not a bad film by any means, but not a memorable one either. In 1973, Peter Cushing returned for one final entry in the series, Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. You gotta love these cheesy titles. This was the last film for director Terence Fisher. What was Frankenstein trying to do when he made this thing? It doesn't click with the serious tone of the rest of the film. This one takes a bold, serious approach that is dark and depressing. I really want to like this movie for these reasons, but it just doesn't do anything for me. It does nothing new for the franchise. It's just Frankenstein creating another monster, almost deliberately this time. There's no interesting twists, nothing unexpected happens, and it moves at a very slow and uneventful pace. It's an underwhelming closure to the series. Around this time, Hammer was winding down. Just as they breathed new life into the horror genre in the late 50s, now, in the early 70s, a new breed of horror films were taking over. Think about it. This movie was released the same year as The Exorcist. Any future Frankenstein remake should take a hint from the unique ideas explored in these movies. You could take the best elements of all these films and put it all together, just like the Mad Doctor himself. Like in the Dracula series, trying to track down all these movies on home video is a mess. Curse of Frankenstein is owned by Warner Brothers, Revenge of Frankenstein is owned by Columbia, Evil of Frankenstein is owned by Universal, Frankenstein Created Woman is the only one that's still retained by Hammer and was released on an out-of-print DVD by Anchor Bay. Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed is owned by Warner Brothers, and Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell is owned by Paramount. I don't know why so many other companies own the rights to Hammer films, but it would be nice if Hammer was able to release them all in one package. But then again, Hammer only releases everything in Region 2 because they don't want the rest of the world to be able to watch them. No, region coding doesn't make any sense. Well, anyway, tune in tomorrow and we're going to look at another monster series, and this monster is in the big leagues.